Okay, so today we're taking a look at graphing cosine. So we've already done sine, and now we're going to do cosine. And the biggest difference between the two is the starting point. If you remember, sine started at the origin, and then it oscillated in between +1 and -1 when the amplitude was 1. So the main difference with cosine is that it does not start at the origin. It's going to actually start at 1. And but the same rules apply. So if we're taking a look at our general form, a cosine b of x. So a is still the amplitude, just like it was for sine. So that's going to tell us how high and how low we're going to oscillate in between. B over here is going to deal with the period. Again, we're going to leave that for another video. So for today, we're going to leave the period of all of these is 2 pi. So one full cycle of the cosine curve will happen in 2 pi. Okay, so to graph the basic one, as I already mentioned, you're going to start at 1. Okay, and then this one cycles through this way. At pi over 2, that's where it hits 0. At pi, it goes all the way down to -1. At, geez. Sorry. There we go. Okay. Oh. There we go. At 3 pi over 2, it comes back up to 0. And then at 2 pi, I keep getting this thing popping up in my way. Sorry. But at 2 pi, it comes back to 1. So this is one full cycle of the cosine curve. Okay, you see that? So it starts up, goes all the way down, comes back up. Okay, and again, this is just one cycle. It does keep going forever. So this pattern just keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. So it will go forever and ever and ever in both directions. Okay, just like that. So it just bounces in between the positive and -1 as long as the amplitude is in fact 1. If you change the amplitude, then it's going to bounce back and forth between whatever the amplitude is. So speaking of which, why don't we go ahead and change the amplitude? So let's erase these. Actually, maybe before we do that, I just want to show you, just for funsies. Let's graph in blue. If I were to graph, hold on. Just so you can actually, it's kind of neat to see them but right next to each other. So if I were to graph in blue the sine curve, that looks like this. So, isn't that neat? And again, this one would just keep going, keep going, keep going forever that way. You're just going to keep going forever, forever, forever that way. Do you see how they are the same graph, just shifted, right? Cool. Okay. So anyway, back to cosine. Let's go ahead and change the amplitude and see what those look like. So I'm going to have to erase all this and move the screen. So bear with me for a second, because I still don't know how to do this any other way. Whatever. It works, right? There we go. Okay, so now let's try and, oh, there we go. Okay, so number 2 here has us changing the amplitude to 4. So let's go ahead and let's work in green. They don't give me many colors. There's only 5 colors I can pick from, but green's my favorite color. So, all right, so it's a cosine curve. So I know that I'm going to be starting not at the origin, right? But this time, where am I starting? Well, the amplitude is 4. So that means I'm going to be bouncing in between +4 and -4 for the whole graph. So this one starts up here at +4, and then at its first interval hits 0. At pi, we're down to -4, 3 pi over 2, back at 0, and 2 pi to complete the first full cycle back up to 4. So exact same thing, it's just that I'm going all the way up to positive -4. And yes, the pattern keeps going. So if you want to just extend it for the values we have, there you go. Okay, easy peasy. So go ahead and try the other ones on this sheet. And that's it for today. So next week we're going to, oh, actually next week is probably spring break. So the week after that, we'll talk about those period changes that I keep mentioning. And then things get real interesting. Okay. Wash those hands.